Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this video lesson about World War I. I'm Miss Jennifer Blank, and I will be your guide on this journey. So today, we're going to just go over some big picture stuff in this video lesson. We're going to talk about the United States entering the war and also Russia exiting the war, which happened very, very close together. So we're going to kind of go through some big picture stuff, and later video lessons will cover interesting things like the Bolshevik Revolution and also the effects of the war. So without further ado, here we go. All right, so what ended up happening to get the U.S. involved in the war? Because the U.S. was neutral, right? They were very isolationist. They didn't want to get involved in Europe's, middle school drama, right? They wanted to stay out of it and really just make a lot of money. So if they stayed neutral, they could trade with everyone, which means mad cash for the United States. So they were very excited about this. So what actually tripped this wire that got the U.S. into the war, which was a terrible, terrible decision on Germany's part. So May 7th, 1915, there's this ship called the Lusitania. And it was an English luxury liner, as you see there. It was sunk right off the coast of Ireland. A lot of people who were on board were killed, and 128 Americans were killed. So this is what kind of started this path for the U.S. getting into the war. Before the Americans and others boarded the ship, though, the Germans warned them. They said, do not get on this ship because an attack was possible. A full-page ad in New York papers, all right? So they were trying to give the U.S. a heads up, saying, hey, listen, real talk, don't get on board that ship, But everybody's like, whatever, we're the United States because we're neutral and it's fine, so we're going to get on that ship. Well, they sunk the dang ship, so there you go. When the ship was sunk, everybody was, and then the Germans were like, listen, we gave you a heads up. We let you know what was coming, and we told you we were going to do it. Now, why'd they do it? Well, it was carrying war material. Now, the British and the United States claimed it was not carrying war material, but that was a lie. That was a straight-up fabrication. There were 4,200 cases of small arms that were bought in the U.S. and were getting shipped back to England so they could use it in the war against Germany. So this brings up an interesting question. Was Germany justified in sinking the ship? The United States and Britain would say, no, it was not. It was a passenger ship. But dude, your passenger ship was carrying war stuff. So in a way, it's kind of like the Germans were like, listen, this was pretty justified. So you can take that and you can put it somewhere else, because you're wrong. But at any rate, that was Lusitania. So there was a secondary explosion after the ship got blown up. And the Germans, of course, as I said before, felt pretty justified in sinking that thing. So here's a lovely picture. I'm going to move my little guy here. So here's some pictures of the battle, the sinking. So here's the ship on its own, just doing its thing. And then here is the actual sinking of it. So just to give you some visuals on that. All right, so Americans at this point are now not happy with the Germans. They are very anti-German. President Wilson, who was president of the United States, was very upset, and he believed that the freedom of the seas had been violated. But then why were you shipping war materials on a passenger ship? So maybe the U.S. needs to take a look at itself and see what it was doing there. Okay, so you have a series of messages that go back and forth between the U.S. and Germany, and then they agreed to stop attacking passenger vessels because Germany really doesn't want the United States in the war. They don't need an extra person to deal with. They want to just focus on what they were dealing with and not have to add in any extra parties. So things did calm down. In 1916, the Allies said they'd arm merchant ships. So once they said that, then the Germans started sinking ships again, but this time, no warning. They just decided to start sinking stuff because they said, listen, we tried it the nice way, and you guys don't respond to nice way, so we'll just blow you up, and that's fine. That's fine with us because we tried to be nice, and you weren't having that, so fine. We'll do it this way instead. Now, the Sussex was another British ship. That was sunk with one American on board. At that point, Wilson is like, that's it. I'm going to break, ties, diplomatic ties. Now, when you're breaking diplomatic ties with someone, and we've seen this happen lately with our current foreign policy in the United States, that's usually the last step before declaring war. Thankfully, that didn't happen right away, and it's not happening yet right now. But it is something to watch out for. Once you start breaking diplomatic ties, you're very close to declaring war. And that's a very separate endeavor than just having a diplomatic spat with somebody. So because Germany didn't want the U.S. to get involved again, they said it would stop and search before it attacked. So now we have, at this point in the war, just prior to the United States jumping in, we have a stalemate on the Western Front. Okay, so basically, what does that mean? Well, the two sides were equally matched. So they were killing a lot of the other side, but it really wasn't making a dent. Nobody was advancing. Nothing was moving forward. We were just kind of treading water and continuing to kill each other. So because of this, each side was trying to find new people to join to try to break that stalemate and give themselves the upper hand. The Ottoman Empire, such as it was, joined the German side in August of 1914. The Italians switched sides. They joined with Britain and France. And of course, at this point, the colonies are also drawn into the fight. So over the course from 1914 to 1917, different sides are going to jump in. The United States, of course, will jump in 1917. I'll talk about that in a second. So it stays neutral, the U.S., because it wasn't ready for war. Right now, if the U.S. had to go to war, we could go to war. We could fully mobilize and make it happen. We have an extensive standing army. We've got different branches of our military. We've got Army, we've got Navy, we've got an Air Force. We got all kinds of stuff. We got special forces. We got bombs. We got ships. We got planes. We got everything. Now we do. We didn't then. We were not ready for full-on war. But we were making a boatload of cash supplying Great Britain with some goods. So why did the U.S. actually end up entering the war? Well, freedom of the seas has been violated, number one. You can look down here. This is what we're talking about. Innocent lives have been lost. Commerce was interrupted. You have a shift in American sentiments because of what Germany did. So the U.S. had become anti-German after the Lusitania. And then there's this thing, and this is the straw that breaks the camel's back here, okay, the Zimmerman telegram, which I'm going to tell you about now. This was incredibly dumb on Germany's part. I mean, what were you thinking? So what's the Zimmerman telegram? This was an impressively bad decision. So the British were so excited. When they saw this, they're like, yes, get this, intercept this telegram and send it to the United States forthwith. Send it there as fast as humanly possible, because this means the U.S. is going to be pissed and they're jumping into the war. So what did this telegram say? Germany would finance a Mexican attack. They'd pay for an attack on the U.S. from Mexico in order to keep the U.S. busy on its own side so that it wouldn't jump into Europe, right? That was the goal. So if Germany's paying for Mexico to pick a fight, then, the U.S. isn't going to jump in on Europe because it's got its own fish to fry, right? And the idea was that when Germany won, which they assumed they would give back to Mexico all the territory that we won in things like the Mexican-American War and other things like that. Now, in this telegram, they also suggested that Mexico asked Japan to jump in on this. This was not, no, this was a bad idea. So, of course, the U.S. is like, are you kidding me? Like, really? Like, are you kidding me? Like, no, now we're in. Now we're declaring war. So Wilson had a plan for how world politics should be conducted after the war, but we were jumping in now. He called this his 14 points. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, and we're going to examine it in class. He wanted the idea. Wilson was a diplomat at heart, and he wanted to calm everybody down. He wanted peace, but he knew that he wouldn't get anything in his 14 points. He wouldn't get that peace if the U.S. didn't jump in the war and help. So jump in, we did. So many levels of bad. For Germany, this was not a good time. So the U.S. troops didn't arrive in large numbers right away. But the fact that everyone knew the Americans were coming really raised morale quite a bit, because they knew that relief was on its way. They knew that help was coming. And when you know that help is coming and you just have to hold on until that help comes, that gives you that drive, that desire to actually keep holding on, because you don't feel hopeless. There's hope. Whenever you can give people hope, they're going to do what needs to be done. Okay. Now, roughly the same time, or around the same time, Russia withdrew from the war because they were having a revolution of their own. This is the Russian Revolution, also known as the Bolshevik Revolution. This is not going to go very well for the Russians, but we'll talk about that in a separate video lesson. So in 1917, Russia withdraws, and also in 1917, the United States comes in. And this is involving the Allied side. So the fact that Russia was already beaten up pretty good and they're leaving, and the U.S. is completely fresh and ready to jump in, that made a big difference in the war effort against Germany. So what is total war? This is an important thing. I want you guys to understand what total war is. Not all wars are total. Some wars only affect certain countries. Some wars only affect certain parts of society. Total war affects everything. No one escapes. It doesn't matter what your race is, what your religion is, what your social class is, how old you are, what your gender is. It doesn't matter. Total war affects everyone. Okay. And what you also usually have with total war is a massive increase in government powers, which can be very dangerous. And that is something we have to deal with now in our modern context. Government, this is a long drawn out war. Okay. The war has been going on for almost 20 years at this point. So, and the government powers that started at the beginning of this war on terror have not gone away. They have increased. And whenever you have a concentration of government power, you have abuse of that power and corruption. So this is something that as citizens we need to pay attention to. When you have an increase in the size of government, you always have the use of propaganda because they want to manipulate public opinion. So they give you a certain perspective to convince the public that this is how we should feel, what we should think, what we should do. And they omit. They leave out certain important pieces of information and they overemphasize, they over-dramatize other pieces of information in order to get their point across. Now, government always feels justified in doing this, whether it violates civil rights, whether it violates the Constitution. They really don't care about that because they're focused on their one goal. And whatever they have to do to achieve that goal, they will do. So women joined factories at this point because, you know, women are not in combat, unlike now where women can be in combat. But so they worked in factories, they drove trucks, they did men's jobs while the men went off to war. This is going to have a major social impact because now all of a sudden women are going to realize, hey, listen, I can do things. Like, we can do stuff. We don't need men to, like, we can drive trucks. We can work in factories. We can, like, determine our own destiny. So this is going to light a fire in the women's movement that is going to be like, hey, listen, wait a second. We held it down. Like, we held the line while you guys were off blowing stuff up in Europe and we made things happen here. So don't just, you know, you can't just come on back and tell my butt to get back in the kitchen because, no, I like driving trucks more than I like the kitchen, you know. So this is going to start really kick up the women's movement and the drive to get the right to vote in the United States. So, like I said, women get the right to vote in the United States. And in Germany, Austria, and Britain, women demanded equal pay. They say, hey, listen, we are doing just as much work as men are, and we are doing it exceedingly well. So where's my equality, dude? Like, where's that at? Like, you need to give it to me because I deserve it and I've earned it. So this is going to create some social strife. Military draft was also imposed. Factories produced war products primarily, so there was a lot of rationing, not necessarily in the United States, but in a lot of areas of Europe, you had a lot of rationing. Civil liberties were removed outright or threatened. In the United States, they'll pass the 1917 Sedition Act, which made it illegal to speak out against the government, which is, you know, just a tad, just a little bit violation of the First Amendment, just a touch. You know, hello. Unemployment ended because everyone was put to work in some capacity towards the war effort. In the last year of the war, the influx of American troops really did help to bring the war to an end because they were fresh and there were more of them. And so this enabled them to really put the nail in Germany's coffin. So the war ends on September 29th, 1918. German leaders were informed that the war was lost. So Armistice Day was declared November 11th, 1918. That was the official end of the fighting. The war, for all intents and purposes, was over, but the official end to the war would not be until the Treaty of Versailles was signed. And before that happened, we had to have a peace conference and come up with that peace treaty. All right, and that's going to be where things get a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But that is the end of this video. I hope you learned what you needed to, and I will see you next time.